It. Welcome to Derry's first season ends with a terrifying showdown between the very human heroes of Derry and the evil cosmic horror known simply as It. However, what initially seems to be just a desperate fight to shove Pennywise back into his cage soon reveals itself to be much more than that. The HBO show not only deepens its connections to Andy Muschietti's It and IT Chapter 2 this week, but teases future seasons that would reach even further back in Derry's sordid history. The 8th episode of IT, Welcome to Derry, Winterfire, is now streaming on HBO Max. Pennywise's perception of time. Welcome to Derry. Chapter 1 ends with the reveal that Pennywise the Clown experiences time differently than we do, seeing everything in all of history happening at the same time. Because of this, he already knows how his story ends, with the Losers Club defeating him in IT Chapter 2. That means he also has the power to target ancestors of these iconic Stephen King characters earlier on the timeline, potentially killing them before they can contribute to the bloodlines that will eventually sire Beverly Marsh, Bill Denbrough, Eddie Kaspbrak, Ben Hanscom, Richie Tozier, Mike Hanlon, and Stanley Uris. The Marge Truman reveal. Welcome to Derry. Episode 8 reveals what we already suspected, that Marge Truman would grow up to become Richie Tozier's mother in dramatic style. Co-showrunner Jason Fuchs said, "We knew very early that Marge was going to be Richie's mom. We knew that we wanted to have obvious connections to the original film and the original Losers. We also wanted to have less obvious connections and connections that made themselves clear as the season went on." Fuchs explained that the Marge-Richie reveal wasn't meant to be a shocking twist, but something that came with an emotional resolution based on clues from the whole of the season. You know, she's a gifted impressionist, so that to me, unequivocally, that is the first clue that she might be related to the character we all know and love from the movies and the book, Richie Tozier, Fuchs said. However, the final moments of the season also take us to the year before growth, its next feeding cycle. We see Ingrid Kirsch now as an old woman in Juniper Hill Asylum. She walks in on young Beverly Marsh in the precise moment that the girl discovers her mother has died by suicide, thus weaving the strands of this story together even tighter. Key questions answered. So why does IT, Welcome to Derry, bring back Sophia Lillis as Bev Marsh? What is Pennywise's plan to defeat the Losers Club in the past? How does the spirit of Rich Santos help defeat It in the 1960s? And how does this tie to Stephen King's The Shining? Here's everything you need to know about the end of IT. Welcome to Derry, Season 1. How Rich Santos helps defeat Pennywise. It. Welcome to Derry. Episode 8 opens with a fog descending upon Derry and Pennywise, capturing all of the local teens in the thrall of his deadlights. He marches them across a frozen river to an ancient tree that marks the boundary between his cage and the rest of the world. Lily, Ronnie, and Marge are in hot pursuit, hoping to save their friend Will, while the adults are using Dick Hallorann's powers to track the girls and Pennywise. Rose explains that they must bury the magical dagger beneath the tree to act as the missing column of its cage. If Pennywise manages to cross this threshold before they can do so, all is lost. Dick uses his powers to distract Pennywise just in time to save Marge, whom Pennywise specifically targets because she's destined to be Richie Tozier's mother. With Pennywise frozen still, Will becomes freed from the deadlights. At this point, Shaw's troops attempt to stop Leroy and the other adults from saving the day. Leroy tells Will and the girls to sneak through the fog to the tree while he and the other grown-ups run interference and deal with the military, who are determined to let it free. Shaw tries to ally himself with it, to no avail. Now freed once more, Pennywise races the kids to the tree. Leroy attempts to buy the kids still more time by shooting Pennywise, but runs out of bullets. At the same time, the children are struggling to bury the dagger. Then, Dick Hallorann says a goddamn miracle happens. The spirit of Sesqui dispatches Rich Santos's ghost to join his friends. With his help, they bury the dagger and seal Pennywise back in his cage. Fuchs said, "Rich is such a fundamentally good young man. He has so much light in him. It felt like that was the perfect character, even in death, to be able to pierce the veil of the quite literal fog of Derry in that moment and help save the day for the good guys and help be there for his friends. Because that's fundamentally what Rich was about. Rich does the gang one more solid, visiting his own funeral, where he comforts his parents and inspires Dick Hallorann to use his shine for good. Rich, I think, is defined by the way he treats the people, by the way he is there for the people he cares about. And so even in death, he's still doing it, Fuchs said. He is really a selfless character. He is the polar opposite of the Dick Hallorann we meet at the beginning of this season, who is a deeply selfish character. Dick Hallorann's journey. Fuchs explained that what he loved about Dick Hallorann's journey this season is that you can look at his growth in two ways. You can look at it and say he changed, that this is the story of a selfish guy who becomes selfless. But I also think that there's another reading of it, which is that he was that person the entire time and didn't know it, Fuchs said. He, I think, was always that guy deep down, and he just hadn't had the circumstances that revealed it to himself. I think seeing the possibilities over the course of this season, seeing Leroy, seeing Rich, seeing all these other characters make the choices, make the sacrifices they make for one another, it awakened something in him. It made him acknowledge and be able to see something in himself that I don't think he knew was there at the beginning of the season. Dick Hallorann ends the season leaving the military in Derry. He's going to London to work as a chef in an old friend's hotel. Though he jokes he can't imagine a hotel will be much trouble, Stephen King fans know his journey eventually takes him to the Overlook Hotel in The Shining. Note, the Overlook is in Colorado, so Dick is going to a different hotel. The return of Sophia Lillis as Beverly Marsh. Yes, that is Sophia Lillis reprising her role as young Beverly Marsh in the final seconds of IT Welcome to Derry. And no, it's not a tease for Season 2 as much as it's a recontextualizing of one of the creepiest scenes in all of Stephen King. I think, really, the most interesting aspect to me of that scene is that it changes the context of the scene between Beverly and Mrs. Kirsch in IT. Chapter 2, taken directly from the book, Fuchs said. My initial understanding was the reason it is taking the form of Mrs. Kirsch is specifically to prey on Beverly's trauma related to her relationship with her dad, which is certainly twisted enough. Now, if Mrs. Kirsch was there when Bev's mom died, its decision to appear as her becomes all the more disturbing. That's really interesting, because what it suggests is that it is preying on one of her darkest, most painful memories, Fuchs said. Whether Beverly remembers that, in terms of the state of her memories in that moment in Chapter 2 or not, it is flickering at the back of that brain. So it's a pretty messed up choice. It was already a messed up choice, but it's an even more messed up choice when you realize the implications of that. Will there be a second season? In one of the final scenes in IT Welcome to Derry Chapter 1, Marge confesses what she learned about her future to Lily and expresses concern that Pennywise might target other people in the past in a similar way. Lily shrugs it off, saying it's someone else's fight, but there's evidence to suggest that potential future seasons of IT Welcome to Derry will deal directly with this topic. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe for more.